speaking of history, we want to talk about the Lindy community. And we're welcoming Tina, Shisomo, and Marie to our next conversation about heritage. So let's talk about heritage a bit. Thank you all for jumping in. And we just kind of wanted to just start a conversation about heritage and how we. And I just wanted to put a question out there to you all because we've been hearing this a lot as we've been doing this work. It came up in the last panel, which is how do we honor the cultural roots and how do we honor our elders in this dance? And I know it's a really important topic for everyone. And I know you all have some, very powerful thoughts on
that. Tina, did I hear that you have a project that has to do with collecting oral histories? Am I getting that right?
Yes, we do. We do have that project with Black Lindy Hoppers Fund. One of the things I think Shahid asked was about, legacy and honoring our elders. And so for me, as a Black woman, in this culturally and historically, one of the biggest things, one of the most important things that you can do to honor your elders is this matter of respect. And so that for me, that's I achieve that culturally and historically because of the way I'm raised. But there's also things that we can do within the community. One of the biggest things that you can do is actually listen to them. Oral history is so important, at Black gatherings. If the great grandma, your great granddaddy's talking, you listen. That's what you do. You listen. The sheer fact that they dealt with and experienced things that you can only imagine commands that respect. The fact that they actually survived. This is why you honor them and you respect them by listening to them. There's a lot of cultural and traditions in that are intrinsic to Black culture.
Right.
I could expound on that. I can.
Well, and so with this project, are you? So your goal is to just collect these stories?
No. So part of it is collecting the stories. It's also sharing the stories with the Lindy Hop community and others at large. We've already kind of started that. We've also have this concept of stewards, and these stewards actually are interviewing our elders and people who are, sort of tradition bearers or people who have these the historical knowledge about our elders, about our scene in different ways. And we're collecting those stories and we're safekeeping them because, that's the thing that goes away quickly. And once it's gone, you can't get it back. So that's very important to the Lindy Hoppers Fund and Black Lindy Hoppers Fund.
Wow. And that's something that's so incredible about this project, I think, is that what we're running up against, I say we, like I do any research, teehee. So the historians within the Lindy Hop community keep running up against the lack of information about many of the early Lindy Hoppers, especially the Black women who were involved. And so as we're trying to contextualize this dance, then we only have these very specific stories or perspectives. It's why people like Frankie and Norma and Dawn were so important to us, because we could ask them questions and hear their perspectives. but there are so many people involved in Lindy Hop who will never be able to hear from. And so I think it's incredible that you know, Black Lindy Hoppers Fund, that you're doing something to prevent that cultural knowledge from being lost.
Exactly. And there are a lot of people that are still here today that many of us don't know about, have never heard, in many Lindy Hop circles. And so we are doing the work to find those people, talk to them, and projects that we have going on in Harlem, projects that we have going across the nation in regards to respecting and honoring our forefathers in the dance and our cultural heroes.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And there should be some in the Facebook chat and the YouTube comments. There should be some links for those of you who are watching to get connected to these projects and learn more about them. I want to ask Marie, about teaching that cultural context. So I know you were primarily working in Europe, which is, as we know, the birthplace of non-Black people. So how for our non-Black dancers and instructors and scene leaders, how do they teach the cultural context? I mean, what should they be communicating? And I say this, those of us, the Black dancers amongst us, we can benefit from this too. But yeah, I just wanted to ask Marie, how do you teach that?
Yeah, and it's an interesting topic, and to piggyback with what Tina was saying, you can't if you don't know the people, if you don't talk to the people, if you don't bring forward the people. It's like, because culture lives and is passed from people to people, from that community or society. Without the people, you will maybe get history, if when you can get it right, because you mentioned that it's hard to find some of the facts, especially about Black women. So you might get part of the history, but you won't understand the culture, and that means you won't understand the big picture and the context in which those historical facts were happening. So yes, if you want to speak of the culture, especially a culture that is not your own, you will have to do some level of cultural immersion. And I think this is a problem that we're facing in our community, where the only link to Black American, African American culture, or Black culture in general people have is through Lindy hopping or jazz dancing, and that is it. And then when you start to explore other aspects of Black culture, they're like, oh, no, I'm not into that. Oh, I don't know this, or I don't listen to that. And then you're like, wow, you're really going to go far in this then, with an ironic smile. And most of the time people don't understand that. And I think this has been the big push in this conversation that has been brought forward in the past year and a half, is that the people have been pushed out slowly. The people that were kept in didn't have power, even though they were respected in a way, but their voice is the voice, but in a context that was not their own. And so that took away power from them in a way. So we got part of the culture, or the part of the culture that people wanted to hear, passed on, and then interpreted through cultural translation of the people's culture, because this is what we do. When you get an information, you are going to translate it into your own culture. And that's something that we all do. And it's not because you're a bad person, or it's not because you're a great person that you're doing that. It's just, that's part of being a human being. You're going to make it accessible for you. But when you're going to pass that on, the product that you're going to pass on has changed from the product that you got. And the absence of African Americans in the scene, or the push away of African Americans in the scene, I should say, little by little, has made that we never had a reference point to go back to the original idea so that we could adapt that cultural translation that happened, which led to 30 plus years later, the scene that we have today. Right. So we want to understand culture, we need to bring back the people.
Marie, what would you say? Just this question comes up. I'm an instructor. I don't come from the culture. I love the dance. I want to spread the dance. I want to, but I do want to honor and teach from a cultural perspective. But I'm in an environment where there are no Black people. What types of is I know. I hate saying this to you because everyone wants it to be prescriptive, which is like, here are the 5 things you need to do. But if there was something you could say that, could be, like here are my takes on what I think we should be sharing from a cultural perspective.
Well, there are some fundamental values that are shared between Black culture and an African diasporic point of view. Which you find in different geographic culture and different dance styles, dance forms throughout the African diaspora. And they all share the idea of communication, the idea of improvisation, the idea of community, the idea of rhythm, and the idea of play. Like, those are fundamental ideas that you have, and in communication it's exchange, but it's also competition, because we had that talk with Tina. Like, we like to compete as Black folks, and like, I always talk about my mom, how she's got the best dresses to go to church, because going to church is a competition and you have to outdress your friends or something.
It's like, oh, go ahead, Tina.
Yeah, so there, to tag on to what Marie's saying, there, I mean, at any Black gathering, and from a cultural standpoint, there are things that we're going to do, and I've always tried to incorporate those into all of my events. But we're going to dance, we're going to compete, in some way, whether we're shooting the dozens, who makes the best potato salad, who's the best dancer, who has on the best shoes, who makes the best centerpiece, whatever. We are going to compete in some way. And we're going to play games, we're going to have fun, but all of those, and we're going to listen. And somewhere in there, like I said, grandma's going to say something and everybody's going to shut up and you're going to listen, and then you're going to go back to dancing. And I think as a culture, universally, we have those things in common. And it may, maybe the food's different, maybe, but those are the things that we do. And I think some of those values can be brought back into our community.
And I've been seeing instructors, even over Zoom, even though we haven't been able to dance to personal spaces, I've been seeing instructors try to teach from a cultural perspective. And, and I've been seeing the times where it works and the times that it doesn't work, because I know it's uncomfortable for folks to do it. And I've been in a couple of online classes, where it felt a little nerve-wracking. And, that's also kind of the concern that you have too, which is you don't want to walk into an intro class and then it's like rock step racism, because, that also could be a barrier against Black people as you're trying to teach a cultural perspective. But then you're like, you came in, you're like, oh, I just came to dance. And all of a sudden, so, what is there any other kind of suggestions you would have that can help someone who's like, terrified, but wants to try to like infuse more cultural roots into this dance?
We just had with Collective Voices for Change, we just had a book club with a fantastic book by Jackie Malone called Stepping on the Blues. And that book is the first step to understand African American culture. For me, it's a must-read book. If you are doing this dance, you have to read that book, and you have to read it several times, because it's going to take several taking in to understand all the layers of what Miss Malone is laying out, because she's really making a parallel between the past and the present, the continuum of African American dances, and also the core values that have been preserved in the dance through generations. And it's really easy to read and beautifully written. So books are a good way to start. But again, books alone is not going to cut it if you do not meet the people, talk to the people, listen to the people, because that part has been, yeah, not so good.
Marie, you told. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just saying that Chisomo has a word of wisdom for us.
Yeah, first I want to say thank you so much to Tina and the Black Lindy Hoppers Fund, and Marie, I know you're also on the board. So thank you so much for your work in preserving this really important cultural information. And so I wanted to say that first. And I wanted to also add and say, as we're talking about relationships, I think in our educational context, we come to know how we should gather information, right? And I think what's challenging about this is that the way that we get cultural information isn't necessarily going to be taught to us in school. We need to value relationships and not just mine information. And so it's going to be challenging. It's going to be hard. This process is not going to be super intuitive to everybody, I think. And so I just want to remind us of something. So you might hear the words decolonization or colonization, or I'm going to use the word coloniality. And so that has to do with how we categorize things, how we understand the world around us. And it's not, in respect to a historical context. And so coloniality seeks to codify and categorize in order to understand, perfect, and control. And so I would say that as we're moving forward and asking questions, cultural questions, that we give ourselves the time to immerse ourselves in experiences. Like Marie was saying, we need to have relationships. And Shahid, you'd mentioned earlier that like with Tulsa, that you didn't learn about this in school, right? So there's certain things about ourselves and our own cultural backgrounds, regardless of where you're from, where you might have to dedicate yourself to study and you might have to dedicate yourself to listen. So I would say definitely books, but then also seek out collaboration and community, because as we look to move away from coloniality, that's the answer. Collaboration, community, relationships.
Speaking of collaboration, there's also the question they brought up, which is about outreach. How do we bring more Black dancers, people of color, BIPOC dancers into our scenes? I mean, I just threw it out there. I was actually hoping Marie would just like take it and like bite on it and.
I think it's we chatted a little bit about that, and I have a bit of an opinion about things. I'll often have a bit of an opinion about many things, and I think that yes, it's good. It's a good idea. It's a good focus to think. Okay, how do we bring more people of color? How do we bring more Black people in the scene? But we also have to look at the scene and wonder the other question that we don't want to ask ourselves is like, why do they not stay? Why do they leave? Because it's you can keep on bringing people, and if they still find the environment toxic, if they still are facing the same microaggressions, the same casual racism, the same gendered and racial sexism that they are facing in the life in general, because this is something that we face every day, they're not going to stay. And no matter how much they love the dance, no matter how much they connect with the music, no matter how much they want to share with the people, especially if when they come into the scene, they are being told that they should dance differently. They are being told that they are too much this or not enough that. They're not going to stay. So yes, we need to bring in more diversity into the scene. Definitely agree. But we need a hard look at the scene to understand why people are not staying. And I think that's been the work of Collective Voices for Change, asking the question why and trying to understand How did we get to the monochromatic scene that we have today? Why did we get to that point? And how do we not repeat that? Because that's really what we want. We want to make sure that when we get diversity again, because the scene was diverse 35 years ago, 38 years ago. When we get back to that point, how do we keep it like that and not have the same focus on superficial values or cherry picking one aspect of Black culture and just deciding this is the goal, like saying it's only about social dancing, because we've had that. We had the exchange time. That didn't work. Or it's only about competition. That also didn't work. We got this hierarchical community where you're only valued if you have a certain amount of medals. That doesn't foster communication and connections and relationships. We want something that is multidimensional, just like Black culture and African American culture is multidimensional, so that we can have true connections and true relationships.
I love that you said that. I love the way you frame that, Tina, which is when this community becomes more diverse, because it will, and I love that approach. I just wanted to just drop. There was something you said to me one time as it related to teaching. I just wanted to just throw it out there really quick, which you talked about the hang hour. And one of the things I thought was really nice is you talked about, here's what instructors can drop little cultural nuggets. It doesn't have to be sometimes like a big spotlight on it, because I know it's uncomfortable to do, and not to be afraid to try. One thing that came up in our conversations as we were discussing ways of bringing more people of color, BIPOC people into the dance community was collaboration and reciprocity. And Andy, I know you have some comments on that as it relates, but do you ever go into the Black community? Or are you always asking for people in the Black community to enter into a space that might not necessarily be their own to experience a dance that originated from their culture? Andy?
Yeah, actually, just because I feel like, yeah, that's always kind of like something I hit on too. And I feel like what Chisomo talked about, how do we avoid coloniality and objectifying people and turning us into commodities? And then when Marie is talking about, that experiential access, what are you inviting people into? That's exactly what I think about when I think about outreach. Is it reciprocal? And that's kind of the question I would maybe toss back out to, Chisomo and Marie, because I feel like your ideas blended so beautifully. It really married together this idea of, hang time. How do we make these communities holistic and wholesome and true and based on relationship? And then if we're really thinking about power imbalance, how are you actually engaging? Is it a one-way street? You can't just be inviting people to your space. Are you in other spaces as well? But yeah, I'm curious, what are maybe some of your thoughts on that, Chisomo or Marie, this idea of outreach, thinking about how you brought together avoiding coloniality with this idea of the experiential access that people need.
So I'm just going to jump in here. And I know this last year has been wild because of COVID. So we haven't been able to connect in the same ways. But I've seen some scene leaders do some really interesting things and taking advantage of the time. Because I think typically in a typical year, we're just so fixed on doing event A, event B, training for event C, that this time to develop relationships and to have an exchange, it's not just going to a dance and dancing the way you want to, but actually having an exchange of ideas and concepts. I'm seeing more and more scene leaders do that. And so I think even, my cultural context is, I'm from Zambia. I was born in Zambia, and I've spent my life learning what it means to be a diasporic African, because I've lived in the United States for a good chunk. And then also because I am a Black woman in the United States, I'm perceived as African American, and I have found safety and refuge in African American communities. And so there is part of me that super identifies in that space as well. And so seeing as the way that the world looks at me and also understanding my cultural context, I've had to do a lot of learning and exchanging within myself. So I've seen different people foster conversations about various places. And not so looking at African dancing, looking at African American history, looking at taking a time to bring different speakers, to not just bring people into your community, but then allow Black folks to actually develop a cultural space and step into that. I've seen that done really nicely. And then lastly, I would be remiss if I don't mention my podcast, Integrated Rhythm. Bobby and I work really hard to have reciprocal conversations. And if you listen to him, he's speaking from his own cultural perspective. And so he's not trying to say like, oh yeah, to only talk about the times that he's interacted with people from a Black perspective. You know, and we have our podcast set up so that we're having cultural conversations from different directions while also elevating Black voices or BIPOC voices. It's really important because we as people have certain voices that are more central to us, right? That are more proximal to us. If you turn on the TV, you're going to see certain bodies and certain faces. And those faces and those bodies don't often look like me. And so you don't often look like the people who originated these dance styles. So the hope with our podcast is to give BIPOC voices an opportunity to be centralized and to not just mine experiences, but to let people tell stories the way that they would like to tell stories. So.
Right. Just wisdom droplets raining on us from these incredible people. I'm privileged. So, I mean, you talk about elevating Black voices and a lot of, and then talking about experiential and material access. And so giving Black Lindy Hoppers, opportunities. I just want to kind of shift our focus a little bit to talk about the Black Lindy Hoppers Fund and hear a little bit more about how it is creating pathways for BIPOC dancers to take leadership roles in Lindy Hop and be those elevated voices. So I believe we have a video.
Yeah, one of the things we're doing here is, as we're talking about these cultural perspectives, is, there is an organization that exists in our community right now that are working on these issues, and one of the things that we want to do is we want to do our best today to support them. And we're going to watch a quick video of just learning a little bit about the Black Lindy Hoppers Fund. Drop it for us, B.
We're really happy to present more programs for the Black Lindy Hoppers Fund. The notion of mentorship is imprinted in Black cultural tradition. Elders of the community share their experiences to nurture the potential of the next generation. Through our mentorship program, the BLHF will provide space for learning, support, and performance opportunities.
Our residency programs are designed to share the culture responsibly with a focus on embodiment, providing the community with access to the skill sets and knowledge of established artists, and also giving Lindy Hop and jazz practitioners the opportunity to grow as well.
We have hosted 2 highly successful intensive training programs and are looking forward to sharing many more. We're also working to develop relationships with HBCUs and jazz-focused institutions to continue reestablishing the legacy of Lindy Hop and jazz. For ways to support the BLHF, please check our Instagram, Facebook, and web pages. Thank you for supporting the mission and vision of the Black Lindy Hoppers Fund.
All right, so for those of you watching, there is a link in the chat to contribute, to be part of the community who's helping these BIPOC dancers find these leadership opportunities. But just real quick, I know, Marie, you have to leave us soon, but is there anything else that you'd like to share about Black Lindy Hoppers Fund or about sharing cultural context in classes?
No, I think Tina will take it away with more info about the
Sure,
BLHF.
yeah. Yeah, so we do have a lot of initiatives that we're really proud of. Our most recent one is we have a resources page. So if you go to Black Lindy Hoppers Fund, I think they have the link for that. There's an artist resources page. And this is actually made up of Black Lindy Hop artists, musicians, lead organizers. We've just started building this sort of database. You'll see people listed there. There'll be contact information. If they have a website, you can go to that. And one of the things that we always get asked, like, who do we hire? I need to know who these people are. There's Black musicians on there, and all of these people are vetted by our BLHF board and our artistic consultants. And so you will see that develop even more as we go through this. We got quite a few people listed there. We've got some other people sending in some more information, so we'll be developing that even further as we go along. We also have our youth programming. We've already helped some of the programs in both Mozambique and Uganda. And Julia Lovingston, who's one of the board directors and has done a lot of work with those groups. We're going to continue to do some youth fellows that we will send to a lot of these locations internationally and also within the US to work with youth. And that's part of our youth program. There's a program that we're going to be having with our youth program with ILHC. BLHF will be partnering with it. And so we'll be live streaming to a lot of youth groups all over the world. And then there's also in New York City, we have a program where Julia Loving and others have got with local fraternities and sororities and working with the Department of Education to create youth programs. We have another youth initiative that's with the Upward Bounds program. And the Upward Bounds program is Black HBCUs, programs where these are college-bound teens that come in for the summer, and they're taught life experiences, different things. And year before last, before the pandemic, we had a program with the Frankie Manning Foundation that also supported that. And we had Kyle and Alexis come in and teach the youth. We're going to continue and expand that program under the Black Lindy Hoppers Fund next year and going to different HBUs across the US. We have an oral histories project, which I talked about earlier. Some of our stewards have done a lot of work with that. We also have, let's see, I have my list here. One of the biggest things that we've done in the pandemic is we've had our residencies and our intensives. And so those are actually, the intensives are free to our Black Lindy Hop Fund members. We've had people like Jason Samuel Smith, Ryan Francois, Marie, Remy Kukukwame, Natasha Powell, Josette Wiggin. And our latest intensive is with Charles Turner Band and Latasha Barnes are doing a collaboration together. And like I said, those are free to our Black members. And but everybody is welcome. And so, if you support this initiative by attending and paying for it, you can also join in on the program. Let's see, anything else I'm missing? Anything else I'm missing, Maria? I'm kind of got a lot of things. I know we have a legacy project that we're starting up as well.
Yeah, the programs are moving forward, and the whole board is very excited about the work that we've managed to create during a pandemic, and really looking forward to what we can do as things are slowly going back to normal safely. And we are looking for people to help us write grants because you've heard we have a lot of ambitions, And that's going to take quite a bit of money in order to put this program together. So if you are a grant writer or you know a grant writer that would be able to help us, we would be really happy to be contacted at info@blacklindyhoppersfund.org.
And a note is you also don't have to be Black to be part of these programs. You know, we accept help. We have people that are helping us right now in a numerous amount of ways. You know, if you can't do anything, you can always just donate. That helps. We've got a lot of programs. We've got a lot of work to do. We're really excited about it. Just like Marie said, hit us up at our info address and let us know what kind of skills that you can provide to help us with. We'd be most appreciative.
Thank you, Tina. Thank you, Marie. Thank you, Juliet. Thank you, Latasha. Anyone else who I've missed, thank you so much. Please support the Black Lindy Hoppers Fund. I know we care so much about the stance, and I know we care about the cultural heritage. I know we care about the elders. I know we care about having youth programs. This is an organization that's doing this. It's a lot of work. They need your support. They need more than just financial support. If you have extra time, if you have resources, you could donate an hour or two, writing grant writing, legal advice. Like, you know, this is a brand new organization. They're going to do great things in this community, but, you know, as we know, they're going to need the infrastructure, and we can all do this together. This is what this is about, moving together, coming back stronger. So please support the Black Lindy Hoppers Fund.